Welcome to this presentation, which is focused on using the Bible for preaching. There are two approaches. You have the indirectly biblical approach and you have the directly biblical approach. Under the indirectly biblical approach, you would have like topical sermons. Persons would believe that topical sermons are not faithful to the Bible because we start off with a topic, as it says topical sermon. So we start off with a topic and then we try to find a passage to pace to pace the or to match up the we find a passage to match up the the topic which we are dealing with. And most times we find ourselves forcing onto the passage an idea. So we force on an idea which is not there. So that's why persons believe it is not faithful to the scriptures. You will find under topical sermons, you will find doctrinal sermons. Doctrinal sermons has said doctrine sermons like doctrine of the Holy Spirit, doctrine of salvation, doctrine of baptism, doctrine of the coming of Christ, and we could go on. So there are plenty doctrines there. Doctrine of the word, what is the word, and so we could do a series in terms of doctrinal sermon. On the directly biblical, you have the second one, which would be expository preaching or expository sermon. And what is the root word of expository? Expository is coming from the root to exposed. So, what does that have to do with a sermon? So, to expose then it means to explain, or to those who want to be fancy, to expose the truth that is in the passage. So it's exposing the truth that is in the passage. So the expository sermon is somewhat in a story form, normally come in a story form. The third main type of sermon is, and there are several others, not limited to these three, but the three most popular. And the third is textual preaching. Textual sermon tend to be very old, uh, and some want to believe that it is the most faithful. Because, as I said, text is based on the word, the text. So you go on a verse by verse, or you try to anchor your points in the passage that you are dealing with. So then, in the stages of preaching, in terms of preparing for the preaching event, you're assigned to preach this Sunday coming, what would you do? The very first thing to do is to pray. 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 And then the second is which some persons will find difficult, is settling on a passage. There are persons who choose a passage and they even start the sermon and say, no, I don't think this is this. And they go again and they choose another passage. I think that is just crazy. And I think most times when persons do that is when they find out that they can't handle the passage, so they choose something else. No, challenge yourself. I don't take that approach. I don't take that approach. A passage is a passage, and that's what I'm dealing with. I have never find myself start a sermon and then say no, this is passage and something else. But I have seen other persons, even trained persons, doing that, which I just think is crazy. Deal with the passage that you have before you. How you arrive at that? Persons have different approaches. Some persons they will pray, and it just rests on their mind to for a particular passage. I normally use the lectionary. The lectionary is a list of reading. Lection mean reading. It's a list of readings, and it has cycles, normally like 5 year cycles and so forth. So I mean, it's normally used to be published in like a hymnal form, but now everything is on the internet. You can just Google it. So like lectionary 2022, and you find the reading for each week. The lectionary, you're not limited to it. I'm not saying you ought supposed to use the lectionary. I use it because it helped safeguard choosing favorite passages, or even though the lectionary has its limitation because it gives four groups of reading. You have the Psalm, you have the Epistle, the Old Testament reading, you have the Gospel. And if you're not careful, you can, from the lectionary, you can just stay longer in one section, just choosing the Epistle because I like the Epistles more, or choosing the Gospels because I like the Gospels more. So the lectionary has its shortcoming too, but at least it guards against, the chore words or choosing passage because I have something to tell this person. And it also helps you to go through most of the Bible, if not all, in a particular cycle. So and of course for me it's less headache, trying to wrestle with what to preach, what not to preach, and it's already listed there. Just choose one. So, I mean, it helps in many ways. I tend to use the lectionary. We should stay away from the chore words. Be faithful to the Bible, the passage. And as one person would say, it is easy, very easy to pick up chore words, and we should never think that it is so encoded. Although most persons don't want, I find they don't want, it's not a parable. They want you to know that they're throwing words at you too. Um, that's abuse of the pulpit, though. The pulpit is for the good news, the message of salvation, what the Bible has to say. Yes, you will challenge sin, you will challenge, this is the human condition, and you challenge sin, but you also reassure the person of forgiveness, and it's possible to grow there. So it is not to just highlight the sin and leave it at that, right? So that's the other folly of preaching, wherein persons tend to only dwell on beating persons, and condemning persons, and for them that's preaching. That's just one section of the sermon where you identify the human condition, which is maybe the human condition is sin. The other human condition is not sin only. It could be for healing, persons who are hurting. Could be for reconciliation, and we could go on. So what is the human condition, and what is God saying? What is God saying to this human condition and situation? So we arrive at the passage, whatever by whatever means, but we arrive at the passage. Deal with one chapter and one chapter only. I have heard times before where persons they are dealing with three, four, five different passage. How on earth can you handle five chapters in one 5 chapters in one sermon? It's even hard to deal with one complete chapter in a sermon, much less because one chapter has multiple sections and multiple focuses. You have 4 or 5 different sections in one chapter, so you're not going to preach the entire chapter either. So you have to. It's good to have a study Bible, or a good Bible that you can actually, which would help you with the sections, identifying the sections. So you might have us 8 to 10 verses there, which is, I think, is very a good amount of length section, 8 to 10 verses, I would say 15, which some would say 15 is too long. I would give a little space for up to 15. But in best practice, 8 to 10 verses. You also know the reverse is true, where you don't want to be too short, where you don't capture the essence or the situation that is going on. So 8 to 10 verses is good enough. You then would want to, so the next step, you will read a passage, read it one or two times or even three, then you leave it and you probably go about your daily business. Never assume that you already understand, no matter how familiar the passage might be. You go about and you may come back again and you read it another time, and then you start to make initial jottings, things that come to mind at first. Just make some notes. First thing you want to do is to identify what is the subject, or what is the point of this passage. What is it saying to me? What is the point of this passage? Is it about love? Is it about salvation? Is it about mission? Is it about forgiveness? Is it about humility or servitude? What is it about? And the list goes on. It's not limited to what I just say. I just gave some example. What is the focus of this passage? So in structuring the sermon, you would start with the introduction. For the introduction, you would have a short background, which is relevant to what you're dealing with, the background of the passage, right? So you say, for example, if it's something from the gospel, you might say, at this time, maybe the Roman authority was in government and they were pressuring the people to pay tax, and so they came to Jesus to ask about tax. Um, Jesus would have teach them how to live with the authorities. Or say from the Old Testament, the background might be that the people is in exile, and what happened? They were in exile and they felt hopeless. They felt like, boy, God has abandoned us, a sense of hopelessness. So they need hope and they need encouragement. Or it could be that even though they were in exile, but God has proven to be faithful, that even though you have sinned and drifted away, but I have not abandoned you. I am still with you. I still remember the covenant I have made with you. So you give a background which is relevant, and then you go on now to the subject. Show how the subject, so say if the subject is on love, show how love, you find love in that passage, and so you tie it on to the passage. And then you would go on to the body, the body. So in the body, you will have the 3 points. The 3 points that you will be dealing with, or two could work too, so 2 or 3. And these 3 points must come from the subject, which is from the passage. So you can't be dealing with love and the points come up from about forgiveness or something. So if it is love, you might say, love has no limits. The point number 1 or 2, love goes beyond, as in it is sacrificial and it goes beyond. Or you might say love is outreaching to other persons, so it is missionary nature. That might be point number 3. So you see, the points are coming from love. The points are dealing with love, which is from the passage. So whatever you're doing, you should be tied to the particular chapter that you're dealing with. Deal with the chapter that you're on. So not running all over the place and preaching from Genesis to Malachi to Matthew to Revelation, the entire Bible. It's impossible. And you end up there whining on for 40-50 minutes and there's no center, you're going nowhere. It's too broad, right? So you zoom in. So, in preparation, you identify the background or the history. Then you will do the reading work of it, where you leave no stone unturned. You read each word carefully and pay attention to the verbs, the action words, because there are a lot of meanings which come from the verbs. Pay attention to the action words which come out of the passage, the tense in which it's used. Like, say, for example, if you're good at tense, if not, you can leave that alone. But if you're a language person, you're good at tense, you can even look at, say, the action is used in the continuous tense. So if it's the love of God and it is in the continuous tense, what that action is saying is that God always loves us. It is ongoing. So the love of God is not one off, but it is in the continuous tense. God is loving, always loving me. So you see, the tense is important, and the action, the kind of how the action is done. Is it just a one off action that is done, or is God always loving me? Or if it is on forgiveness, is it that we should always be forgiving, or is it just a one off forgiveness? So the verb, pay attention to the way how the action is done, and when the action is done, is it an action in the past, or is it an ongoing action that is done there? Is it a perfect action? It is say a perfect action which is completed might be Jesus' death on the cross. It was once and for all. Jesus said, "It is finished." It's perfect action. It's finished, completed, done once and for all, completed. So the way how verbs are used is very important in carrying out the message. So as we become seasoned preachers, we want to pay attention to the way how verbs and action words are used in the passage. Okay, so we want to also look at the application. This is another folly of preachers, where we only stay in the Bible word, because we're so in love with the Bible that we spend just in Bible word, Bible land. But what is the message to me today? What is the application? The Bible is not only in the past, but it is speaking to us now. What is the message to us today? Um, you have to make it be alive today, in today's experience, right? Speak to us today. So what is the application today? There are persons who want to hear a word for today's world, and the crime and the whatever is going on today. What is the message for us today? Okay, so the outline of the sermon. So we start with the introduction. We have the 3 points, and then we end with the conclusion, or the message. I want to highlight the message. What is the message for us today? What is the message that you're giving to us today? What are the takeaway? What are the points which I need to bear in mind today? What are the points today? The message for us today. Um, Also, it's important that you also reassure persons of God's action and God's forgiveness. So we not only identify the human condition, but um, uh, God's action, whether it's grace, love, compassion, and so forth. The good news must also be in the sermon, or else it's not a sermon. So it's not just to come bash and attack persons, but yes, you identify the human condition, but then what is the grace of God experienced in the passage and for us today? So finally, important to the message or the conclusion, how do you want us to respond? And this is the other folly of preaching, where persons, they will go on and they'll say a lot of stuff about the topic, which is very good and profound. But you end and you don't tell us what to do. You left us out there. You don't tell us what you want us to do. I am confused. What do you want me to do? Um, and never assume that the persons know what to do. Never assume that they're such a scholar and you can work it out. Go and figure it out yourself. No, you to help us to discern what do you want us to do. You tell us about love, and so forth. Yeah, that's nice and that's powerful, but what should I do? What should I do with the love that you're telling me about? So, what do you want me to do? For example, I recently, as in last Sunday, I did a message from Jeremiah 17, I think it was, which is about the two ways, the two paths, the godly path and the ungodly path. Those who have chosen the godly path, a metaphor is used of they are like trees planted by the rivers of water. It's in blessedness. And here is how I did the call to action. I said that it's a call to self-examination. Firstly, to examine what? To examine where we are, which path have we chosen, and what in the storms of life, in the hard times of life, will we weather out the storms. And third and finally, that I have made the right choice, that I am planted by the rivers of water, salvation. It is not to say, okay, I'm a part of the 90 and 9. Good for those who did not. That's up to you if you don't want to make it. No, it is a call for us to do the mission of Christ, to rescue the perishing, care for the dying. It is a commissioning, a charge to us that we should go and to help those who are going down the path of destruction. So we would have remembered those calls which is made. So you want to end in giving a call, a charge, like what the response, how do you want persons to respond to the word that you're doing? And many preachers, they preach up a storm and close without telling persons what you want us to do. What do you want me to do? Okay, so our homework was on Psalm 1. Psalm 1, let us hear Psalm 1. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers. But their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in seasons, and their leaves do not wither. In all that they do prosper. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. So, you could label it, you could give as a topic the two parts, or it's several. So I'm not saying you have to be limited, or if you don't have this in mind, then it means it's wrong. You could say it is the blessed life, or the happy life, or which way did you choose? So what is your subject? So what we see here is a comparison going on between the two parts. We could also say the blessedness of meditating um, on the word of God. As in verse 2, we say that on his law they meditate day and night. So we can say those who meditate on the law of God, they shall find salvation, they will be changed, and they will be blessed, they will be happy. So that could be the focus there. And then we build the points of that. So we leave no stone unturned. We can also bear in mind that in the storms and the problems of life, we will be able to stand because we have chosen the way of Christ. We also we want to highlight, because there's a comparison with the ungodly way. So when we match them up, only one will stand. So what we don't want to do is only to share on the blessed part, because that's so nice. So we share on the blessed part and we leave the other section. This sermon, the passage did not end with that. It also speaks about the ungodly, the wicked, right? So we want to balance. We want to not leave the sermon incomplete. what we need to bear in mind as well, that we talk about the ungodly, we talk about the wicked, then it is not to condemn them because they are also made in the image of God. The wicked is made in the image of God and they have a soul to be saved. So it's not for us to say that, oh, you wicked, go to hell. What is the passage saying and what is the missionary or evangelical charge here is that we who is in the word, we must go and rescue the perishing. We must go and reach out for them, right? So it's not condemnation. So we have to balance the scale there. And of course, we could go on. Somebody also shared about maybe even temptation that the righteous should not be found with the ungodly. But even with that, we want to have a balanced argument because we don't want to give the impression that we are holier than others or we are better than others. Because at the end of the day, how will we reach those who are going down the path of destruction if we segregate ourselves from them? So we are not preaching segregation, but a balance. Yes, we want to be set apart. We want to be set apart in terms of we must be known by whom and the message we are carrying, right? So there must be a distinction. But at the same time, we don't want it to come across as segregation. So we want to have a balanced argument and also bear in mind that if there are 10 persons before you, 10 persons will live with 10 different understandings. So you want to be as specific and as pointed in what you're saying so that a person don't leave with the wrong impression or leave with us feeling arrogant or that I am holier than other persons. Next time we meet, we will be looking at another passage, which is Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 9. That's our homework. Thank you very much for tuning in to this session.